Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a brand new Skytember video here on my channel. Now just a few hours ago I published a video for Skytember known as Skylanders Transformations, which was basically an entire new idea for a Skylanders game that I came up with that amalgamated both Transformers and Skylanders together. And that isn't my only Skylanders game idea. In fact, there was a series on my channel long ago. For those of you who've been with the channel since the very start, you'd possibly remember the series known as Predicting Skylanders, where I quote-unquote predicted new Skylanders games, and this was basically my fantasies, you know, my own Skylanders game ideas that I came up with more so than a prediction, despite the fact that I called it Predicting Skylanders. Regardless, with this series being so old, it has a lot of history and nostalgia for me. And I didn't want to just have these videos deleted off the face of the planet and never saw by anyone ever again. So what I've done is I've compiled the 10 best of these Skylanders game ideas into a single top 10 video. So these videos go very in depth about the stories of these games as well as for gameplay and in some cases for roster. So naturally that's what gives this video its long length. And the actual list itself and where I'm ranking these Skylanders games is based upon which ones I want to play most, which ones are the most unique and intriguing, and just which ones would work the best as a Skylanders game. So of course the Skylanders games that I have conjured in my mind that fit these three points for most, sorry I kind of lost the word right there, but luckily I just saw Popcorn out the corner of my eye and he reminded me of exactly the word I needed. Thank you for that, Popcorn, that was surely convenient. But as I digress, everyone's favourite phrase that I seem to have a need to use every single video. Yeah, so videos that, or game ideas even, that get those 3 points nailed are the ones that will find themselves higher up on the list all the same. And just let it be known that a lot of these videos are low in quality and have completely different aspect ratios to one another, purely due to the fact that they are so old in fact. But again, this is a very historic based list. These are videos which, because they date so far back on the channel, have such a great connection to the history of the channel, and so rather than delete them off the face of the planet of the Earth, as I alluded to at the very beginning of the video, I'm instead collaborating them even into this single top 10 video, which we are going to get into right after the intro has played itself out.
So the story goes as follows. Trigger Happy makes an awesome machine, but unfortunately it malfunctions, and so his technology puts several lives in danger. So then Spyro comes in and they start having disagreements because Spyro thinks that technology only puts people in danger, whereas Trigger Happy thinks that magic is outdated and should be overruled by technology. And so this creates a feud between the elements. The elements no longer get along, and each element is forced to pick a side, and so the sides are as follows. Magic, water, air, and life. And they are going against tech, fire, earth, and undead. And so if those are the teams, and how they'd be split, as for light and dark, light would go to the magic side and dark would go to the tech side, but I haven't included those because they will conflict with the next part of the video, which is of course the character roster. So as for character roster, I believe there would be one sergeant per element, a disco light core per element, and this is where the gimmick comes in. The disco light core is basically a light core, but instead of them just lighting up one colour, they instead light up multiple colours, and so that's why they're called the disco light cores. And besides them, there'd also be 2 reposes per element and 2 brand new cores per element. But as for light and dark, however, as always, they do not have enough characters to actually repose. So what I propose with those 2 elements is that they simply have 1 brand new sergeant and 1 brand new core for their rosters. But either way, these characters at the front actually mean something. I didn't just put them there to represent the elements, because they are actually the sergeants I have chosen for this game's roster.
So, as for the story, it's basically a continuation of Skylanders Imaginators, and so it goes a bit like this. Every 1,000 years, there's an Imaginite meteor which hits Skylands, and this brings it great happiness and creation, but Chaos wants this power for himself, so while going after the meteor, in his haste to receive the power, he shatters the meteor. The fragments of the Imaginite form powerful weapons and hats, which are swept from Skylands, but they manage to reach Earth, where we as Portal Masters can use them to make our Skylanders more powerful than ever before, so we can finally bring a stop to Chaos and defeat him once and for all. And as for Chaos's plan, he simply plans to mix Petrified Darkness with Imaginite to create even more powerful Doomlanders, but of course it doesn't work out for him a second time. And so basically, like I said before, you can use these hats and swords created by the fragments of Imaginite from that little explosion of the meteor to upgrade your characters, and basically these weapons would be interchangeable. So take Chop Chop here, we can like take a sword and give it to Ignitor instead. And then for hats, we can simply basically just place on top of a character, and then when we put them on the portal, basically what will happen is that the hat will appear on the Skylander in the game, and they will get the boosted stats from the hat just like they would in the game. So the fact that the hat is also on the physical character as well. And of course, if you choose to swap out this hat, it will also swap out in the game. It will be a pretty neat gimmick in my opinion, and worth making a new game for. There are these beasts within Skylands, but the thing with them is that they are so uncontrollable and unpredictable I should even say, to the point where the Skylanders have never sought them out for like companionship and allies and stuff like that, but neither has Chaos been able to control them either, which means that Light or Dark never managed to use the beasts to their advantage. And these beasts, they don't do good things and they don't do bad things either, because their light and darkness within them is incredibly balanced. So they're just like pretty much neutral at the end of the day. But what happens is that Chaos still wants this power for himself, so what he winds up doing is he winds up cloning these beasts. But what he doesn't realise is that in the process of cloning these beasts, he drains all of the darkness from them, meaning that all what's left is for their light, for their good side. And because of this light, it means that they now seek out the companionship of the Skylanders and want to be allies with them. And so, of course, the Skylanders accept this, and now they and the Beasts have teamed up to take out Chaos's largest army he's ever had, combined with the power of his Dark Beast clones, which you'll be fighting one of these in each of 18 levels. And so there is going to be, in fact, 18 beasts and 18 characters, just like there was in Superchargers, which means that there's enough room in the roster for 10 original characters, 1 per element, and 8 returning characters from the core 8 elements, because, of course, there's not enough characters from Light and Dark to warrant any returning ones. And as for beasts themselves, their gameplay and figures would look a lot like the Supercharger vehicles, in the fact that they wouldn't actually have bases, so you could play with them physically. And then you'd also grab a rider such as Zulu, for example, and with this rider, if you combine the right rider with the right beast, you would become supercharged, you could say. And you could ride these beasts in a different form of gameplay, which would require a whole lot more like beat 'em up sections, because of course beat 'em ups is the main like gameplay element of Skylanders, and so the beast will take it to the next notch, because you'd get completely hoarded with beasts, like it would be kind of like Dynasty Warriors almost with these beasts right here. And then not to mention, because they're stronger than any Skylander, even the giants, this would also allow for very unique puzzles and gameplay elements, which you could only find in beast mode sections. But of course these will all be optional, because I feel like Activision and Toys R Bob have actually learned from their previous mistakes with superchargers and will make all of the like beast mode options side content only from the get-go, so you won't be forced through any of them, any of those sections. But either way, that's the gameplay covered, so now we're going to move into the roster itself. So as I previously mentioned, there would be 10 original characters and 8 returning characters, so we're going to run straight through those right now. So as for the tech element, we'd have Sprocket as a returning rider, because I'm going to assume that her popularity has only grown since her debut in Skylanders Academy. And plus, she'd also make an awesome rider for a tech dragon-like beast, because of course all of these beasts are very much living and breathing creatures, and so her riding a piece of machinery really wouldn't fit in with the whole theme of this here game. So that's why I feel like it would have to be some sort of dragon with all sorts of different like tech additions and abilities and stuff like that. So that does it for Sprocket. Then as for Earth, we'd have Dynarang as our rider, and he'd have a rock dragon type thing like Bash right here, with plenty of spikes and wrecking balls and stuff like that, which would look incredibly awesome in my opinion. And another thing is that riders use their hands, but these beasts use all 4 of their limbs to like walk about, kind of like dragons and horses and for dogs and stuff, whereas for characters with hands and legs and walk about like Zulu and stuff will be riders. So that's how you distinguish between the two, I suppose. And speaking of Zulu and dragons right here, I feel like a Zulu would have a would A be a rider, and B his beast would be kind of like a mix of a life dragon and his boars, so it would be kind of like an ultimate camo, you could say. So that's why I got camo there for the imagery. And then as for magic, I believe Deja Vu could in fact be a rider with a awesome magic dragon as her beast. That's why I got Sparrow for the example right now. Then for fire, we'd have Ignitor as a rider, because, you know, he's a knight. He traditionally would ride an honourable sort of stallion that would be decked up with armour. And of course Trailblazer fits that description, so just for imagery's sakes, we've got Trailblazer here, because this is the kind of beast that I feel that Ignitor would have. And so then next up we have Undead, obviously, and the best rider for the Undead element is easily Chop Chop, because he is a fan favourite and all, and it definitely deserves to be. And he definitely has some sort of skeleton like beast, which would definitely compare highly to Funny Bone, I feel. Then we'd also have Air, which would have Jetpack, and he could ride some sort of like mystical unicorn mixed with a griffin, stuff like that. Which reminds me, the fire element could also have a phoenix type character, so it could almost be kind of like an ultimate Sunburn. So it'd be Sunburn returning without the character himself actually returning, and I think that would be even better for Sunburn than even a Repose would be. But anyway, that's what I definitely think for the air element. And what would you guys think of Sunburn returning as like a beast, being all decked up and stuff, kind of like how the superchargers were? Because the riders would also be like that. They'd have they'd be completely reimagined just like the superchargers, but the beasts could be just decked up versions of previous characters as well. So I'd like to know what you guys would think in the comment section below. But either way, last but not least, we have right here Punk Shock and Echo representing the water element. So Punk Shock is obviously the rider, and I feel like her beast would be some sort of like a sea type creature, just like Echo right here. So can you imagine a character that's designed like Echo and has this much detail, but in a much bigger figure? That would be glorious to see, because if there is one thing I love about Echo, it's the design. Echo's design is awesome. But either way, that does it for the characters. So as you can see, I have all of the riders in the middle, and on the outside are all of the beasts. There's a brand new villain called the Ancient Sorcerer, and so basically he unites with Chaos to reintroduce the darkness into Skylands. But the thing is that Chaos, for some reason, the Chaos from the normal dimension cannot seem to summon the darkness for a second time, and so basically the Ancient Sorcerer betrays him, and Chaos is captured yet again, but this time halfway through the game. And instead what happens with the Ancient Sorcerer is that he ventures into the Mirror of Mystery to receive a Chaos from their dimension, and hoping in the process that he can actually summon the darkness in this case. And he can, and so the darkness is brought upon Skylands yet again. And for Skylanders must combat this force, but this time we have Mirror Masters. So basically, when the Ancient Sorcerer entered into the Mirror of Mystery, not only did it bring back chaos, but also brought back some evil Skylanders. So now the Skylanders can swap from their good and evil counterparts, and that's where the gimmick for the characters comes in. So basically, Mirror Masters, I call them, what they can do is you can take a figure and then you can transform it. So you can have an evil figure like Chaos here, but then you can transform it into a regular good Skylander, kind of like you could with Rollerball right here. And then you have different areas of Skylands which is dedicated to good and evil Skylanders. And as for the character roster, basically every element is going to have one of these brand new gimmick Mirror Masters alongside a brand new core Skylander, and then the core 8 elements are going to have 2 reposes per element, or at least that's how I predict such a roster would be carried out. And so Light and Dark, as you may have noticed from my commentary right there, will not be receiving any reposes purely because there isn't enough characters for them to actually repose. So Light and Dark will just have a brand new Mirror Master and a brand new core Skylander. So yet again, just like all the previous games, Light and Dark will have one less character than all the other elements. But hey, that seems like tradition at this point, so that's why I predicted that that's most certainly what would happen. But as for the characters which I feel will be reposed, let's start off with the Undead element. I predict that Rollerball and Funny Bone will be reposed because Rollerball is a huge fan favourite, and so I definitely see them bringing her back. And Funny Bone, I can also see them bringing back because he too was a fan favourite, and there's so many things they could do with a brand new repose with him. And then for Fire, we have Smolder Dash and Igniter. Now this is more of a nostalgic reason for putting these guys on the list, but it's not like they're hated by fans. In fact, these two are also fan favourites, and so I could definitely see these guys returning also. Then next up we have Spyro and Cobra Kadabra for representing the magic element. So of course Spyro's going to return, he's flipping Spyro. And then as for Cobra Kadabra, if you guys remember back to my top 10 Skylanders that should get reposes, I feel like this guy should get a repose because he's A, popular, and B, has so many different potential reposes that he could do with him. So I definitely see this guy returning as repose for games such as this one. And then for the tech element, we have Countdown and Drobot, purely because these are the two most popular tech Skylanders at the moment, except for Trigger Happy, but I don't see them bringing back Trigger Happy for the for a 6th time. So that's why I think that Countdown would make the game instead of Trigger Happy. And then as for the water element, we have Chill and Punk Shock, and that's because Punk Shock, people have been asking for a repose for so long now, so I definitely see them like picking it up on this and actually listening to the fans once, and by listening to fans I mean bringing in one of the characters that they really want them to, and so that's why Punk Shock should get a repose, because if they listen to the fans then and decide to give the fans what they want, then Punk Shock is what we want, so that's what we will receive if they actually listen to us once. And then there's also Chill, because Chill is also one of the more popular characters along the line of the Giants roster. So these two would definitely make the cut for water element, or at least those are the two that I would predict. Then for life we have Zulu and Stealth Elf, purely because Stealth Elf still has a lot of potential for reposes, and people who develop the Skylanders game seem to really like Stealth Elf, so I don't see them giving her a back seat in the game. And then there's also Zulu, who just like Punk Shock has been requested for reposes for ages now, so if they decide to repose Punk Shock, then I don't see why they would deny Zulu the same fate. And then as the Earth element, we have Prison Break and Fist Bump. Now I chose Prison Break because he too is a fan favourite, and not to mention he also has a lot of potential different reposes they could go with. So Prison Break definitely has the potential for a repose, and he definitely has the popularity for a repose, and then that's the same with Fist Bump as well, so Fist Bump I believe will be reposed for the same reasons. And then finally, last but not least, from the air element, I believe Jetpack and Popthorn would return for reposes, purely because Jetpack still has so much potential for a moveset, and not to mention he's Jetpack. Just like Stealth Elf, the people who develop these games tend to really like Jetpack, so I don't see them giving him a back seat in the game. And then there's Popthorn, and I say Popthorn because Popthorn,
they could do such an easy repose with this guy, and not to mention he was extremely popular back in SWAT Force, so not only will they have to put in very little effort to repose him, but fans will not be moaning because he's an awesome character anyway. So you guys remember the bad guy of a previous game I talked about, known as the Ancient Sorcerer? Well, it turns out that before the Giants were even about, the monsters were the main force of Skylanders' defense, and they would scare away the darkness. But one day, the Ancient Sorcerer put a curse over these monsters, so they would terrorize Skylanders rather than save it. So the Ancients had no choice but to banish them to an realm that could not be accessed by anyone, a prison, if you like. And so, after you defeat the Ancient Sorcerer from a previous game, what happens is that this curse was lifted. The thing is that this curse was also what was keeping them alive for so long, so the monsters are now dying because their years are catching upon them, and so the only way we can save them is by capturing their life essence in none other than... Sorry for that, I didn't say close up there, I just needed to reach for this. Yes, we need to use a trap to protect the monster's life essence. And so now that they've returned to good, we can utilize that good. And what happens is, let me show you the gimmick for these here awesome new characters. So basically what would happen is that you would take the trap which the monster's life force is preserved in, and when you place it on the portal, a 3D hologram of that monster will appear. And so this will make for an awesome gimmick and a very good selling point, because who doesn't like 3D holograms, right? And plus, not to mention, the monsters would work as a tag system, just like the villains did in the Skylanders Trap Team, so that would be very reminiscent of that there game, and will bring back some great nostalgia for me and other fans, I believe. And this will definitely make for a really interesting and really awesome expansion to the already awesome game that I told you guys about before. And so with that all said and done, let's move into the character roster. So as for the character roster, it will be very similar to the previous game, in the fact that it will have one monster per element, one core per element, and 2 reposes. And as for Light and Dark, yet again, they will only receive one monster and one core, because they do not have enough characters for such reposes yet. So as for the Skylanders, I'm going to predict for reposes, we're going to go with from a magic element, Double Trouble, and Deja Vu, purely because these two are really starting to gain in popularity and have a huge potential for brand new reposes, so that would make a Series 3 Double Trouble and a Series 2 Deja Vu. And then as for the next two characters from the Water Element, we have a Series 2 Riptide and a Series 2 Ramshell. And these two have been in high demand for repos a lot recently, and so I'm pretty sure Activision will jump on that and create reposes for those characters for those very reasons. And as for our fire characters, we would have a Series 2 Sunburn and a Series 2 Torch, and just like the previous two characters, these two have been in high demand for reposes. Torch was one of the more popular cores when Skylanders Trap Team first came out, so I can definitely see them wanting to bring her back. And Sunburn has been requested ever since Brad's Adventure because he hasn't had a repose since. And so I can also see them wanting to jump on that bandwagon and earn as much money as they can from such a repose, because many fans would be happy to see him back. And many brand new fans will be introduced to an awesome character in the meanwhile, so that would definitely be a highly beneficial repose. And as for the tech element, we have a Series 3 Sprocket and a Series 2 Wind-Up. So I can see them making Series 3 Sprocket thanks to Sprocket's newest appearance in Skylanders Academy Season 2, so that would definitely add to the popularity of the character and make her more of a desirable repose. And Wind-Up is also part of Skylanders Academy, which I'm sure has also boosted its popularity and will also make for a great repose as well. So that's why I predict them two characters for the tech element. And then as for the undead element, we have two other Series 2 characters known as Series 2 Ghostbuster and Series 2 Fright Rider. And these are really for forgotten undead characters, and so bringing them back will not only make fans happy, but it might also bring them back into the franchise, because they think, oh, Ghost Roaster, I remember Ghost Roaster, can't wait to check out that guy again. And so it'll definitely be a great marketing tool, and it will make for a two really great reposes. So that's why I see them happening, because basically popularity and money, the two go together, and Activision cannot possibly miss out on that. And so as for the Earth element, we have a Series 3 Bash and a Series 2 Scorp. Now Bash has been also gaining a lot of popularity recently, so that's why I can definitely see Bash taking up this repose.
And then Scorp, purely because he's the only other undead which I feel would make a nice repose, and the only other earth element which is popular enough to get repos at this point. So that's definitely why I predicted them two. And then moving into the air element, we have yet again two brand new Series 2 characters, which would be Series 2 Scratch and Series 2 Flipwreck. Now, I'm personally not a huge fan of Scratch, but I've heard from a lot of fans that they love Scratch. And so if the majority of the fan base loves Scratch, then I can definitely see them wanting to bring her back. And I can definitely say the same for Flinkong as well. And finally, our final reposes take the form of Series 2 Bumbleblast and Series 2 Food Fight. And that's purely because they both have really huge potentials for movesets, and they're both really popular characters as well. So like I said before, popularity and money go in together, and so by bringing back a popular character, lots of money can be made, and Activision can't possibly miss out on that. So that's why these two characters would most likely be introduced if such a game was to happen. So as for the story, it's a combination of both Imaginators and Swap Force. And so what's happened is that Chaos has used the Imaginite and Petrified Darkness and made Ultimate Doomlanders with them via a massive reaction he did between the two. And so these Ultimate Doomlanders are way too powerful for any regular old Skylanders, unfortunately. But Ultimate Doomlanders were not the only thing that was created from such an explosion. Power-Packs were also created, and with them came the Ultimate Imaginators. And so these are Power-Packs here, which is basically the basic gimmick of the game right here. And so that's the story. So we're going to move into such a gimmick. So as previously mentioned, these are what's called the Ultimate Imaginators, and they are stored in these Power-Packs right here. And so what happens is that once you place these Power-Packs inside the portal, you can create your very own custom Imaginator. But from there, you can't actually play as this Imaginator. What you do instead is you train it. And this is basically inspired by the amiibo from Super Smash Bros. So it's almost kind of like an amiibo, like my Hamslam Bowser right here, because it can function both as a Skylander, as an amiibo, and a creation crystal. So it's a combination of the both of them in the form of course, these Power-Packs. And so what happens is that you first of all place your Skylander on the portal of power, and then you plug in your Power-Pack as so. We're going to move those out of the way. And so then what happens from there is that you can train up your Ultimate Imaginator, and so you can choose to either train them to fight like you via the story mode, so you train together, or you can train them to go against you in the PvP mode, which we're going to get into later on in the episode. But the coolest thing about this is that you can take a friend's Power-Pack, such as this one, and once you plug that into the portal as well, your custom Imaginators can fight each other, which means that you and your friend can have like a tournament to see who trains the best Imaginators. And so that would be a really, really cool gimmick, I feel. And to add even further to this, what you can do is you can stack these Power-Packs like so. So as you can see, they all have like a chip right here. So that's basically the chip that would be red from the portal. And so what could happen is that you could place these chips inside each Power-Pack as so you could stack them, if my hands would let me do so, that is. And the more you stack on top of each other, the more powerful the top Power-Pack will be. So this Power-Pack in particular will be the Power-Pack that gains most power. So by stacking it up, you've given it 3 times the power it would have normally. And you guys are probably wondering what these black spots are on here. Well, what they are is they are hologram units. So what happens is that while it's on the top, it will display a 3D hologram, which will make for an awesome gimmick indeed. So I'm currently in Cadaveria's crypt, as you can tell, and I'm in this level for a good reason right here, and that is to do with the plot. So as for the plot of the game, such as this one, what's happened is that an undead sorcerer has brought to life an undead army and plans to take over Skylands, and he succeeds. And this enters Skylanders into the age of the Apocalypse, where zombies and undead dragons run rampant.
And the only thing standing between them is the Apocalypse Hunters. Now, what kind of undead army would we be looking at? Well, that's why we're at the Cadaverous Crypt today, because it has stuff like rotten robbies and stuff. So it'd be kind of like a zombie apocalypse because of the fact that rotten robbies right here, as you can tell, are indeed zombies. But nevertheless, that's not the only undead creatures you would encounter in a game such as this one, or even up and down in a game such as this one, I should go as far to say. You also have these type of enemies right here, the bone and arrows, alongside Roo babies, and even some spiders to go alongside that. But as you can see, they're no trouble for Igniter, which is why he's going to be part of a character roster, which we're going to get into in a second right here, as soon as we finish hunting down these undead warriors, because I'm basically, like, doing what this game would consist of, which would be hunting down these undead warriors. And among these undead warriors would of course be Malfoy, because he's like king of the undead dragons, I believe. He isn't the sorcerer who brought all the undead, who raised the undead army, but he is part of the undead army, and in fact one of the generals of the undead army, which is why he would face off against Malfoy, and I feel like he'd be a great addition, and this would be the perfect game to do so, because the fans have been asking for Malfoy as a boss for a while now, so it would definitely be the perfect time to introduce him. Nevertheless, with all that being said and done, let's move on to the character roster in this game.
Okay then, so as for the character roster, I would personally see 2 Skylanders per element, 1 brand new Skylander, which we will get into in the next episode of Predicting Skylanders actually, and then we'd have 1 revamped Skylander. So what do I mean by revamped? Well, I mean kind of like what they did with Superchargers. So of course they took a old Skylander and completely changed up their design to make them look a whole lot more cool and a whole lot more threatening. So that's the same thing that would happen here. We take the design of an old Skylander and upgrade their design so that then they looked more of an Apocalypse Hunter, because that's the thing, the new gimmick characters in this game are those Apocalypse Hunters, and they've got to look all armoured up and all threatening because they're dealing with an entire apocalypse, not just one man, I suppose, in this instance. So the stakes have really been risen. So to meet those stakes, the Skylanders have upgraded nevertheless, kind of like what they did in Superchargers for my example. So, as you saw from me, I was playing with Igniter, and that's because I feel like he'd be one of the characters to be revamped, purely because his design is perfect for it. They could easily just upgrade his armor and give him a brand new sword, which actually comes to the second gimmick of this game. So you know how I mentioned the Superchargers recently? Well, that's not the only way how this game would tie into Superchargers, because what has happened is that the Rift engines have mutated in a way. For Rift engines have been upgraded so that now, instead of being vehicles, they are what are called relics. So you can get these relics all separately, and you can attach any relic to any character. But if you play with a certain relic with a certain Apocalypse Hunter, both the relic and the Apocalypse Hunter both get upgraded with new skills and more powerful abilities. So that's where the Superchargers aspect comes in. So basically, instead of having vehicles, we have relics instead, which can come in all different shapes and sizes. But anyway, as I did mention with the roster previously, there would be 1 new Skylander and 1 returning revamped Skylander per element. So we're going to go to the returning Skylanders right now. So as we've already saw, Igniter will be one of them, with his relic being a brand new, hugely updated sword. Then we also have Whamshell representing the water element, whose relic would be a brand new giant mace. Then we also have Voodoo representing the magic element with a brand new axe-free relic. Then we'd also have Trigger Happy representing the tech element, and he'd have a huge Gatling gun. That would be very exciting to see, nevertheless. Then we'd also have the final Spyro's Adventure representative, Terrafin, who could have some awesome, like, gauntlets on his fists for a relic. I think that would be a very interesting one, nevertheless. Then there's also from Swap Force now, Grim Creeper, who could have a brand new scythe. How interesting would that be? And also Zulu, of the, who would represent of the life element, who could have a brand new ultimate staff type relic to helm. And then finally, last but not least, we'd have Blades from Skylanders Trap Team representing the air element, who could have a brand new chunk of armor to be attached as part of his relic, which would really increase armor and speed above all. So yes, you've seen what Skylanders I feel like would return in a game such as this one, and you've seen what relic each of them would helm. So as I mentioned previously, these relics could be attached to any Skylanders. But if you play a certain relic with a certain Apocalypse Hunter, then both of them get upgraded
skills and abilities and stuff. So that really like promotes you to play with the Apocalypse and Relic match, kind of like how it did with Superchargers, with Supercharger and vehicle combinations. But either way, nevertheless, enough has been said about this character roster right here. I do quite like the idea of the Rift engines evolving into the relics, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. So starting off with the story, I have Skylanders Imaginators here for a reason, and that's because this story would be a follow-on from Skylanders Imaginators, a bit similar to my Battle Masters episode. But either way, what Chaos has done is he has created a full army of Chaos clones, as you can see in the photo right here. So a bit like the ending of Imaginators, the only difference here is that the army is so big that one Skylander alone cannot defeat the whole army. So instead, you must build a squad, and that's where the name Squad Force comes in. So right here, I have my very own squad. So we have Igniter, Spyro, Chopper, and Punk Shock. A squad consists of 4 characters, but you can get more characters per squad throughout the game when you level up and stuff like that. And so, as for the gameplay itself, it will be very similar to the Mario and Luigi franchise, as you guys can see here. So basically what would happen is that you can explore through the game, just like you can in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, for example, and solve all sorts of different puzzles and stuff, and find collectibles along the way. But then, when it comes to combat, you do a turn-based system, just like Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. And so this turn system is basically the combat for the game, and so it basically be a lot like a lot like Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, just with a Skylanders skin on it and the nice Skylanders charm to it. So the story goes as follows. Basically there is a powerful telescope in Skylands which has the power of 10 elemental lens, which allows scientists to see beyond the boundaries of Skylands. But of course Chaos wants this power for himself, so he attacks the observatory to which it's located. But luckily for the scientists at hand, the Discoverers are there, so they happen to be the brand new gimmick characters, which I was talking to you guys before about. And so basically, they are able to stop Chaos from receiving the power of the elemental lens, but they're not able to stop Chaos from destroying them. So Chaos attempts to destroy the telescope instead of letting the Skylanders have a power to it, but in his haste, a magic explosion is created, and so these lens are sent to Earth with, of course, the Discoverers, and they manage to forge a bond with all of the Discoverers, so that then the Discoverers can swap between the elemental lens at wish, which is of course the bases in our world. But, however, Chaos has still gained from this because he now has the power of all 10 elements. So now the Skylanders needs to be more powerful than ever to take him down, but luckily for us, the brand new Discoverers also have a power of all 10 elements, meaning that they will be able to match Chaos's elemental powers. So right here I have of course the Traptanian portal. Now this is just going to be an example, I don't feel like this is what the portal would be like. But either way, alongside that, I also have Blastamine. Blastamine is a perfect example for what I want to show you, what the figurines themselves would be like. And so basically what would happen is that you would have small little base things that would be a similar shape to Blastamines right here. And so what you could do is you could replace these different bases with all the different elements. So of course, to be one for magic, one for earth, one for water, one for fire, one for tech, one for undead, one for life, one for air, one for light, and one for dark, of course. And you could swap out these bases as you would go along. And so what would happen when you swap out these bases is that the Skylander would become of that particular element when you swap out for that base. But what I think would be really cool about this is that when you put your Skylander on the portal, whatever base you're using, say it's the light base, the Skylander would have some translucent plastic up here, kind of like Blastamine's Traptanian crystals. And from that
translucent plastic will glow the color of your chosen element. So you've chosen a light a light base for Blastmine right here. So his crystals right here will glow up white to represent the light element. So this means that you can design your character however you want, and you can still have them fit into every single element with the way how they light up. So that would be really cool to utilize all the different elements in one Skylander. And of course, your Skylander will have different attacks based on what the element will be. So I believe there should only be 10 new Skylanders for this, because every single one can of course be of any particular element. So that would basically make for 100 different combinations. But I feel like that would be absolutely a-okay with me. But anyway, these bases do more than just swap out the element. Now this is called Skylanders Discovery for a reason, and that's because you actually need to discover things. And what I mean by this is that there's going to be codes on the portal itself. So right here you can see crystals. We'll just pretend that there's a hidden code right there, but we cannot see the hidden code. So what happens is that if you want to get into a particular element, into a particular area, say you want to get into a life area, what you need to do is you need to give Blastmine here a life torch, or a life base I should even say, because this base, what will happen is that it will create a torch, and when you place this torch over the portal of power, as long as the element matches up, it will reveal a code. Once you found that code, you can use that code to access certain areas. So like I said before, you'll use a life base to uncover a life code for a life area in the game. So if you're locked behind such a life area, then of course all you need to do is swap out for your life base and then read the code that appears on the portal. And so of course you'll discover the code as you go along, and the code would be randomized, so you can't just go through and memorize all the codes or get the codes online or anything. And I feel like this could work because the portal could easily just create a randomized code from a game that you can read with only a certain light, and each element of course creates its own lights. And then of course, you could read the code from a portal and use it in the game, but the only problem is that this would be very hard to implement, so I don't actually see this game becoming a reality, but it would be awesome if it could, and I'm sure you guys would agree with me on that. But anyway, that pretty much does it for the figures in the gameplay. The gameplay itself would be just like all of the other Skylanders games, with the combat and the upgrade chains and stuff. And every single character and element combination will have its own upgrade chain. Because of course, as I said before, because you can swap out these bases, you can make Blastmine here of any element. So of course, his light upgrade chamber would look different to his magic upgrade chamber, for example, right now. So basically what's happened is that Chaos has found a way to travel through time, being a portal master and all, and only portal masters have the ability to travel through time, as you could tell. But either way, I say as you could tell because of course that's what's mentioned about in several story scrolls in the past Skylanders games. But either way, because Chaos is a portal master, a dark one, and that to be more specific, but a dark one is still a portal master nevertheless, it gives him this ability to travel through time. And so what Chaos does is that he goes back in time to tell his past self how to be successful in conquering Skylands. But the only problem with this is that it creates a hole in the space-time continuum, basically meaning that it screws up a sequence of events leading to the Skylanders' victory. So what happens is that the Skylanders are defeated in this whole new timeline that's been created from Chaos traveling through time by this. So the Timekeepers need to go back through these different time eras and readjust time so that then it's put them back on track, you could say, so that then the time is returned to normal pretty much, so then we can go back to the normal timeline that Skylanders would follow. So that's pretty much how the story would go. Pretty simplistic. But it would really be the levels themselves that would really shine out above the story, I suppose, especially with the gameplay elements which we're going to get into in just a second right here. But either way, more story aspects to cover, I suppose, is the fact that, when I said that Chaos would go back and tell her the past Chaos on how to be successful in conquering Skylands. Well, one of those involves the Hydra, so if this is where Chaos will get the idea to use the Hydra to destroy the Core of Light, which of course,
fails in the end because of the events of Skylanders Bears Adventure taking place, but that's basically where Chaos would get the inspiration from that and where we'd find his Hydra. So in one of the time phrases, what would happen is that we would stop Chaos from getting his Hydra, but then that would create a different sequence of events once again, because of course Bears Adventure couldn't take place. So basically what happens is that we need to make sure Chaos acquires his Hydra, but there's certain things we need to make sure carry out so that then Chaos still doesn't win in the end, pretty much. So basically, that way we adjust time so that the events of Bears Adventure happen correctly, pretty much, and that's pretty much the same for all the Skylanders games. And that's what makes this game unique. But anyway, when it comes to those gameplay elements, which I was talking about previously, the whole idea of the gameplay is that you travel between time eras, whether that's going back in time or forward in time, and it's called Timekeepers for that very reason, I suppose. And so the whole aim of the game is to, like I said, correct the space-time continuum, I suppose, create the perfect time loop once again, so that then Skylanders returns back to its correct time loop after Chaos right here, middle setup, mwahaha. By the way, we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of a character roster right here. So what would happen is that we would have 40 new characters, 4 from each element, of course, because there's 10 elements. 40 times 10 is, of course, 40, so that would make 40 new characters. And these would be called the Timekeepers. So what can Timekeepers do, you're probably asking? Well, every element will have 2 Skylanders from each terrain, one from the future terrain, like Blastatron right here, and one from the past terrain, kind of like what Shroom Moon would be like right here. So one would have futuristic-y type weapons, like Blastatron's sword right here, very futuristic-y indeed. And then some of them would have more primitive weapons, such as Shroom Boom's slingshot right there. And what can happen is that you can swap out these weapons at will. So you can take a future weapon into a past level, or you can take a past weapon and take it to the future, of course. Now, each weapons have their downfalls, so future weapons are way more powerful, but the problem is that they can only be upgraded in the future terrain, and they can be used in the past, but when you use them in the past, however, you must, the game turns from being an action game to a spy game, because of course you need to be stealthy about things, because you cannot be seen with your futuristic weapon, because of course if you're seen in the past with a future weapon, then it will yet again muck up the space-time continuum and the time loop and everything like that. So that's why if you have a futuristic weapon in the past, you must be stealthy about it. And then as for the past weapons, they are really, really awesome in the past. They have it's easy to explore with them, pretty much. It's easier to go around them in the past. So sure, whilst they're not as powerful as the futuristic weapons, you have less risk whilst using them in that terrain. But the problem is that these past weapons can only be upgraded in the future, and in the future is when they are least most powerful. But if you take upgrades from the future, then you can take them and re-implement them in the past. So that's pretty much how the weapons would work, jumping between terrains. And working on like gameplay around levels and stuff, what would happen is that you would play a level in the past per se, and then when you went to the future, you would have a ghost of that past character. So you could be playing with Shroom Boom in the past right here, but then you take Blastatron to go to the future, and what you find is you find a ghost of Shroom Boom going through all of his attack and patterns that he went through in that past of level for stuff that you did, and you'll find that not only do you need to worry about defeating the enemies in future of Blastatron, but also avoiding the attacks of the past character whose ghost now wanders the halls, pretty much. So basically what I'm saying here is that everything you do in the past has an effect on the future. And that can also be said for the timeline as well. So what happens is that if you are, say, caught with a futuristic weapon, so if in the past you're caught with a weapon such as Blastatron's futuristic sword right now,
then of course that would mess up the timeline. So what would happen is that you would be given basically this timeline strip in the options menu, telling you where in time you messed up and how to correct it. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to go back to that time period and correct your previous mistakes, so that then you can recorrect your timeline. And the game is basically not 100% completed until you've defeated, of course, I Am Chaos, and until you've completely corrected the time loop, so it's 100% perfect once again, and that's going to involve jumping forward and backwards. But another gimmick to this is that you're going to need certain relics in order to correct certain mistakes. So if you're, say, caught in the past with a futuristic sword like Blastertrons right here, then what would happen is that you would need to acquire a certain relic to basically correct that. And so what this means is that if you mess up a part of the timeline, then you need to first get the relic and then backtrack. So this whole acquiring relics and moving throughout time is basically the whole idea of the game, and I think it'd be really cool, because this kind of gameplay would be extremely fresh in comparison to the rest of Skylanders games. And not to mention, above all, it would have some very clever execution of the fact that you must jump backwards and forwards throughout time to make sure that everything has been completed as it should be, so that then the timeline can return to normal. And above all, I don't think there's any video game that's done this. I mean, sure, you can time travel in video games, but there's no video games that have really had this kind of system of moving backwards and forwards in time and having to backtrack with certain relics and powers in order to make the timeline correct once again.
Oh, look at that. I've moved the camera like a 60-degree angle from the intro, but enough of camera movements. I want to, of course, end off this video on a high note. By high note, I mean me blabbering on about who knows what, because that's the personality-driven Ignite for you. So, how was that as a trip down memory lane, at least for those of you who have the memories of those videos when they were first uploaded? Now, a lot of these videos were longer than what you saw in the top 10, but these went into bonus content, and for the most part, the bonus content for all of these predictions of mine was the exact same, just Chaos Theme Challenge, because I really want to see that return, and Skylanders Superchargers Racing, just because extra content is extra content, and that is some mighty fine extra content for you to delve into. And then on top of that, you also have arenas and stuff like that. So the fact that, you know, the bonus content was so common amongst all of these points made me not really feel as though it was worthy inclusion. So I just wanted to focus purely on the gameplay, the stories, and basically what made these so distinctively part of the beginnings of my channel, and so that way it can show strongly a great contrast between my old quality and my new quality, so that then hopefully you guys can see the improvement I've made over time. But regardless, I'm hoping this was enjoyable, especially since it took about 3 hours to export. So I will be seeing you guys in the next video, and until that moment arises, peace!